So when the earthquake hit, I was in Asheville, North Carolina. I was actually, when I first found out about it, I was on my way to work in the morning. I was building these high-end canopy zip line tours, and I found out on NPR, and my heart stopped for a minute for sure, and wasn't sure what to do. I was in the middle of helping to run that project there, and was kind of really involved in, I guess, what it is that most people consider their normal lives back home. So I decided not to come right away and to kind of back off, and then a pilot came to me, a pilot/doctor with, as well as a friend of my mom's with a small plane, and was basically like, here we got 2 doctors, and a lot of the past organizations I've worked with in different countries, I've worked with a bunch of different organizations, started contacting me. So that kind of changed, you know, and especially in a disaster on an island like this with the one airport being closed, and then you have a pilot and a doctor coming to you and being like, help us get on the ground in Haiti. It's like, okay, it's time to go. I couldn't turn down such a valuable tool. So, so it all happened really quickly. I went on leave from my job, and I was with a 2-week trip plan, just focusing on the medical, and landed in Port-au-Prince 2 weeks after, I believe, the disaster. And it was interesting to say the least. I'd never had Dr. Bud, 275-pound pilot, bald head, discus thrower, x-ray technician, little tiny Cessna bush pilot that had never flown over the ocean before, and then a little old kind of beat up plane. It was an adventure to say the least. The 2 doctors went straight to work. My mom went straight into surgery. Dr. Bud went straight into the field hospital at the airstrip, had just gotten their x-ray machine in and didn't have anybody to operate it. And within a very, very short amount of time of being on the ground, he was there. You know, it's just a line of hundreds of people, every kind of injury imaginable, just taking x-ray after x-ray after x-ray. So once I got them placed, I started focusing on seeing all these huge disconnects all over the place. And I mean, I literally had a day pack, a tiny little tent, a satellite phone, and a clipboard. And the amount of good that was able to come out of that with no money, just being that connector, kind of facilitator person, bridging those gaps, became very obvious that it was needed very quickly. I mean, within days of being here, I had a contact in Jacmel. The road had closed between Port-au-Prince and Jacmel. There was a big landslide. And so Jacmel was completely isolated and got really badly hit by the earthquake. So within a couple of days, due to the fact that we had this plane, you know, it was a 12.5-minute flight right over the mountain range right there. Within 15 minutes of being on the ground in Jacmel, I was meeting with the Minister of Health for that whole region, who nobody else had really reached out to yet. The World Health Organization had a very large presence here in Port-au-Prince, but there was a huge disconnect between something like right over that mountain, the entire hospital of St. Michel. When I showed up, they were literally doing amputations, not even under a tent, with no anesthetic. And here I knew about a warehouse. This is, like I said, just after a couple of days of being here, a warehouse in Port-au-Prince full of everything you would possibly need. So it's just bridging those gaps, you know, and connecting those dots. Within days, we involved the World Health Organization, the St. Michel Hospital, the Minister of Health, the U.S. I filled a massive order of medical supplies, everything it was that this hospital would need. Got the U.S. Army to convoy it over to the Canadian Air Force, and the Canadian Air Force to fly it over there. Dr. Bud was flying, I think he flew like 70-some hours in like 12 days of first being here. We were constantly loading his plane and essentially just getting all the resources where they needed to be. You know, there was an abundance of resources, just a lot of times literally airdropped into the country, and they weren't going to where they were needed. And sometimes they would be a block away from each other, but there was just nothing connecting those two and just matching those dots. The idea of starting GrassRoots, it was definitely very clear that it would have been criminal to start anything that was A, taking away from what somebody else was already doing, and B, it was duplicating. There's an incredible amount of duplication, and yet there's also an incredible amount of gaps left behind. So it became obvious to start that, you know, focusing on making what everybody else is already doing more efficient and more effective. So it started right before I got on the plane out of here. I was in Fort Lauderdale with a bunch of people running around. We had a warehouse. We had all different contacts from all over the place being very supportive. And it was literally probably 15 minutes on the phone of being like, all right, well, I'm only going for 2 weeks, but what should we call this? So there's a lot of people interested, and somebody wanted to start a Facebook page. It was like, what do we call this? And there was a couple of us on the phone and one girl just on the computer just checking out URLs. And I forget even the names that we went through. We probably went through like 15 names. You're like, no, that's taken. That means that. And then it was like, well, GrassRoots United. And they're like, no, it's available, the URL. We were like, buy it. The name says exactly what it is that we do, you know, and what it is that this is all developed into is getting grassroots, getting the small organizations, individuals, community groups, everybody united and working together.